On the 23rd of March 2020, Boris Johnson announced that the UK would go into a lockdown.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
The Coronavirus Act was passed into law on the 25th of March after only 3 days' consideration in Parliament.
We are enacting with only 2 hours to think about amendments to this enormously complicated bill.
This was a 342-page-long document of the most draconian powers in Britain's history, including powers to forcibly detain and isolate anyone, including children, and for any amount of time, powers for authorities to forcibly take biological samples, powers to criminalise protests and demonstrations. These powers are now in law for at least 2 years. We successfully campaigned for a clause to be included, ensuring a new parliamentary vote on the Act sooner than that. But the government is only allowing a vote every 6 months. Did these breathtaking powers have to be rushed through Parliament in 3 days?
This bill, which of course has been worked on over the past 3 months at incredible pace by a brilliant team of officials.
Why wasn't Parliament engaged sooner in those 3 months? And as soon as the Coronavirus Act came into force, the government created new, separate regulations imposing the lockdown without any parliamentary scrutiny or a vote.
I'm not a good enough historian to put into context the scale of the infringement of our liberties which has been implemented today.
In fact, during the whole 100 days of lockdown, the various forms of lockdown that we've endured have never been in place with full parliamentary approval. It has been dictated.
This makes a mockery of the term of democratic process. Now, it remains the extraordinary case that the lockdown regulations have never yet been in place with parliamentary approval.
The democratic process has been swerved at every turn. This sets a dangerous precedent.
We are, perhaps let me be the first to say it, implementing tonight and in this bill at least a dystopian society.
We're producing reports on the pandemic response and civil liberties every month and sending a copy to every single parliamentarian. These powers must be scrutinised and repealed as soon as is safely possible.
This is a police message. You must stay indoors. This is a police message. Please stay indoors. Remember, you can only go out to go to work and come home, to go to the shop, to collect medication, and for one exercise today. This is serious. We need to beat Corona, and we can only do that if we work together.
We didn't have to wait too long to see police forces overusing their new powers. Regulations on drones, typically used by the military, were relaxed. We saw police using surveillance drones, some even with megaphones, to monitor and socially shame people.
Please follow the government rules at this time. You must stay home.
In fact, policing went far beyond the law. We collected evidence of police ordering people to go home and issuing fines for doing the wrong type of exercise.
Guys, I know you've come out to exercise. You've got equipment like you've got with you. You can do that at home.
Buying the wrong type of shopping, being outdoors for their work.
I'm asking, I don't understand. I was walking past, I'm a journalist, I saw an incident,
I don't care
I wanted to make sure it was okay.
Go home.
I was. Hey, you're all very close to me.
You're killing people.
I'm not.
Go
I was going for a walk.
home.
You're coming close to me.
And even sitting in their own gardens.
As long as you want, I'm asking you to go.
You're filming me, I'm filming you.
Are you going indoors, are you?
So you're saying I'm not allowed on the front garden?
You cannot come to your front garden.
Did everyone hear that?
Yes.
Not allowed.
I'm recording.
Can you step back a little bit, please?
Now, people are being arrested simply for protesting. This is an assault on the most fundamental right in a democracy. To date, over 1,800 people have been fined in England and Wales alone for allegedly breaching lockdown rules. And whilst most communities were banding together to help and support each other, police set up online snitch portals for people to report on their neighbours if they suspected they'd breached the new laws. The problem is, not many people, including the police, the CPS and magistrates, have really understood what the new, ever-changing laws are. Our research uncovered a case where a teenager was wrongly convicted for a breach of the Coronavirus Act after he was spotted visiting his vulnerable mother. But what he was accused of wasn't even an offence. After we raised concerns, the conviction was overturned. It wasn't an isolated incident. We came across more and more cases of people being wrongly charged under the emergency powers.
Go away. Go away now.
We called on the CPS to review every prosecution under emergency laws. And for the first time ever, they started undertaking monthly reviews of every charge, conviction and sentence brought under emergency coronavirus laws. 100% of prosecutions brought under the Coronavirus Act were found to be unlawful. Every single one. Every prosecution has now been stopped or overturned. And in the latest review, 10% of the prosecutions brought under the lockdown regulations were unlawful. However, the thousands of lockdown fines issued haven't been reviewed and are difficult to challenge. They reflect the sad state of British policing. Black and minority ethnic people are 54% more likely to be issued with fines than white people.
Don't grab my arm like that.
Right, you're going to be placed in custody.
No,
yes,
you're placed in custody.
The reason I stopped you is when you came out of the barns, no offence to you, but you're a black male, okay? I'm not going to lie to you.
We've brought together rights groups and lawyers to call for an urgent review of every single fine. Meanwhile, the surveillance state is growing. Drones, ANPR and mass mobile phone data have been used to police and monitor the lockdown. Draconian proposals for digital immunity passports have been thrown around. The government even pushed a centralised GCHQ-backed contact tracing app, telling the public it was our duty to download it. This data-obsessed approach would have put millions of people on state-issued digital tags. We warned from the start this was unjustified, wrong and wouldn't work. And months later, with £12 million of public money wasted, the app has finally been ditched. This was a huge win, but there's much more to do. Make no mistake, a digital coup is underway. Big tech companies with questionable track records, including Palantir, Amazon and Faculty, have swooped in on public data, picking up health-related contracts from the government with little to no transparency. Now, thermal surveillance cameras are popping up across the UK. At shops, at schools, at the workplace, at airports. Not only is this a huge lurch towards biosurveillance and pervasive health monitoring, it doesn't work. They're not designed to measure fevers. One of the places we wrote to was Heathrow Airport. In fact, Heathrow is operating thermal surveillance with automated age, gender, clothing and behavioural profiling. And it's looking at adding facial recognition too. And what about facial recognition? There are many concerns that facial recognition technology has been used at recent protests. The Met Police has said that live facial recognition hasn't been used at protests in London, and that they'll give prior notice when they do use it. But we don't know whether they used other types of facial recognition. For example, on all the photos they took from kettles.
Okay, we're just going to walk you up here, to stand here. Have a look at this camera for me.
No, thank you.
Hello.
No, thank you.
Out of here.
No, thank you.
This all depends on
I am not showing my face to the camera.
This shouldn't even be a concern in a democracy. Working in concert with the government, tech companies have rapidly expanded their policies to make whole new categories of online speech verboten. Twitter broadened its definition of harmful content to include denial of global or local health authority recommendations, which includes specific and unverified claims that invite people to action that could cause social unrest, and encouraging people to not socially distance themselves. YouTube and Facebook brought in similar policies. This isn't about science. Censorship never is. It's about power. Big tech companies have come under major pressure from the government.
Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy, and so remove is another really important part of our policy. Anything that is a violation of our policy, we do remove it.
The government set up a rapid response unit from within Number 10 to work with the government's counter-disinformation cell to tackle harmful narratives online. Little information has been provided about the makeup or activities of these Orwellian-sounding units, but it's clear they're using political power to encourage the removal of lawful speech online. It's truly extraordinary. We wrote letters to DCMS, Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube and Twitter to ask them to commit to uphold freedom of expression.
It creates really terrible precedents for online speech censorship, and I worry that they're not going to go away when this crisis is over. Now that social media companies have decided that they're in the truth business and that they're going to use authority figures to define what is that so-called truth, when we all know the truth is often contested, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. And I think it's quite a frightening world we're now entering into when it comes to online censorship.
Over the past 100 days, the coronavirus pandemic has drastically changed the world more than any other event since World War II. Our country, and all nations of the world, face huge challenges. But when we're tested, we have to hold on to our values, not abandon them. The coming weeks and months are critical. As we learned in the post-9/11 years, emergency responses can extend and endure to create a new oppressive political order. Freedoms are too easily lost. Our civil liberties have rarely faced such extreme threats. Now, more than ever, we need to fight for a free future.